very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, those ones that have joined us here, and those that are watching live on NTV, and those that are watching us on Zoom. My name is Jacqueline Arinda, and I'm proud to say that I'll be your moderator for today as we celebrate Africa Youth Day. When I was asked to moderate, I asked myself, am I still a youth? I first checked the age bracket, and I can confirm to you that I'm still a youth. So I've been joined by other, I'm sure they are also in the same age bracket. So we are having this discussion considering everyone. So whatever they will say today, that means that they are speaking out of experience and they have all the rights. The theme is Youth-Led Solutions, Financing Africa's Development Through Domestic Revenue Mobilization Program. That's the dialogue we are having today. And like I said, these are the right people we thought could have this discussion. Without wasting time, I welcome you all, and thanks to the organizers of this event, that is SEATINI, and we have also National Youth Council Uganda. We also have other partners, that is European Union. And allow me say that we have the country director of Action Aid International Uganda, Mr. Javier Ejoy, who will be giving us the opening remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As said, my name is Xavier Ejoy. I work with Action Aid International Uganda as the country director. I would like to thank everyone who's taken time to come to this meeting, the dialogue on youth-led solution, financing Africa's development through domestic revenue mobilization program. I want to thank, first of all, the organizers of this event, SEATINI. I thank you so much because you've placed young people at the forefront of an important conversation on taxation or revenue mobilization. I also want to thank the National Youth Council, who is ably represented here, the Uganda Revenue Authority, Oxfam, the European Union, and all other stakeholders who are supporting this event today. On behalf of Action Aid International Uganda and on my own behalf, I want to appreciate all of you for taking this discussion on revenue mobilization, but also the destiny, not just of Uganda, but of Africa seriously. On behalf of Action Aid International Uganda and on my own behalf, we think that the discussions about revenue ought to take place when the key people who are affected, but also who have the best interest, not only of revenue mobilization, but of this nation at heart. And those are young people. So that is how important it is. I begin by saying what I usually like saying about young people, that if anyone in this country disregards, undermines, or underlooks the role of young people in whatever they are doing, whatever business they are doing, it could be corporate business, it could be government business, it could be religious business, it could be private business. If you ignore young people's role and the centrality of their role, it will be at your own peril. Sooner or later, that business that you are in will be no more. And I will, in my opening remarks, let you know why that is important. So, Action Aid International Uganda, through its work, recognizes that young people are not just for the future, they are for the present and the future. And so when we focus about transforming this country's economy, its politics, its social structure, and then it is of necessity that the debate, the discussion, the dialogue prioritizes young people, and that young people take center stage. So I am very excited in the room here today to see committed, determined young people. I'm also happy to note that across the country and elsewhere in the world, young people are following this dialogue, and that this is the essence of why we're having this meeting here today. Youth-led solutions, young people, at least from our own understanding, comprise 78% of Uganda's population. The age under 35 and below comprises 78% of Uganda's population. The median Ugandan is a 15-year-old girl. So if you have 78% of the population under the age of 35, if you have a median age of 15 years, and then you know how not only important, but how necessary it is to do everything in our means, however uncomfortable it is, to seed ground, to manage our expectations, and place young people at the forefront of the discussions about any sort of development in this country. This morning, we are reflecting on financing Africa's development and how the youth play in that role, especially regarding domestic revenue mobilization. What is the role of young people in mobilizing revenue for development? How do we treat the expenditure side of that revenue on public services that are core and key to young people? And then what solutions do young people bring, and how much of those solutions have we embraced? Have we transformed from informal to formal, and that they are bringing revenue? How about the conditions in which those solutions are created? Are they enabling enough to release young people to ensure that we get those resources and are able to advance the agenda of the transformation of this country? I would want to say two things, and then I'll go and sit down. My role is just to welcome you. The first thing that I want to say is that young people are a huge resource. They are tech savvy, they are innovative, and they really know how to take risks. And it is in risks that transformations happen. And so when we're talking revenue mobilization, especially domestic revenue mobilization, we need to focus on how we harness that tech savviness, that innovative spirit. I'd also add, sometimes it is disruptive not in the negative sense, but taking us away from the convenient and the traditional roles to a role where we are able to see outside the box, in fact, without a box. And so if we are able to harness the role of young people in that regard, in the innovative, tech-savvy way, we're able to engage them to ensure that they make the contributions. They are in the informal sector. The informal sector, the last time I checked, constitutes 52% of Uganda's GDP. 52% of Uganda's GDP is in the informal sector. That is the sector where young people are engaged in. The question then would be, is our taxation process, our revenue mobilization process, is it focusing on the 52% or is it focusing on the 58%? I liken it to a fisherman. Fisherman talk is now common in Uganda. If you are a fisherman, it might be convenient, and perhaps you might find some fish in a swimming pool which is clean and which you can get the fish easily and conveniently. Or you can go to a pond which is muddy, which is dirty, and the fish might be in abundance. The choice is ours. Do we want to fish? Do you want to mobilize revenue from a swimming pool which is clean, convenient? Action Aid, we pay taxes, and we believe every Ugandan should pay their fair share of taxes. But we also know that the informal sector leads this country because 52% of Uganda's domestic GDP is in the informal sector. Can we transform that sector? Can we enable young people to their innovation gets that revenue that they deserve, the livelihoods, and they're able to advance and then bring revenue? When we see hawkers at traffic lights carrying fruits, running from law enforcement agencies, do we look at them as a liability, or do we look at them as the 52% who are actually constituting this country's GDP? Many of them young people, they are carrying stuff. So to what extent can we transform that trade which is informal, where they are running around streets from law enforcement agencies? How about us ensuring that the services that accrue from revenue are able to transform the trade of these young people? If somebody is selling bogoya and mangoes and apples on the road and running away from law enforcement agencies, how about us creating space, ensuring that these young people are able to maybe cut the fruits, pack them nicely in disposable, and be able to sell, and perhaps instead of law enforcement agencies coming to run after them, to chase them off, they now come to sell trading license to them and bring revenue to them. How about us considering the fact that young people, being tech savvy, are on social media not just gossiping, but actually doing trade? How about us opening that avenue? Yes, we need revenue from internet, but how about us enabling them to trade on social media? And so as we have this discussion today, I want us to open up and focus on how, number one, we can have an inclusive discussion and dialogue where young people are involved in this process of revenue mobilization, but also on the other side, all stakeholders from government, from civil society, and from private sector are also acknowledging that we need to open that space for the conversation with young people on how best we can use their potential, their resources, and their knowledge in advancing revenue that can transform this country in the best way that it can. I want to thank you so much, and I want to welcome everyone in this dialogue. I look forward to a fruitful deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Javier. I'm glad that you mentioned it, that if they are planning for the future, then it is important that the youth are engaged in the entire process. He asked a very important question, and I'm glad that Uganda Revenue Authority has sent a representative. And the question will be coming and saying, do you want to fish from the pond or from the swimming pool? So later on, we shall have a discussion on that, whether URA wants a clear swimming pool or the pond, and that's a very important question. A kind reminder, you can still be part of this discussion through the hashtag, which is Africa Youth Day, and also watch NTV. In case you're on Zoom and you're saving data, please switch to NTV so that you can have the entire discussion. My name is Jacqueline Arinda, and I'm here to let you know that today we are having a very important discussion about the youth being the champions that will lead to domestic revenue mobilization. Allow me also introduce to you Miss Janice Komaro, who is the Youth Engagement Lead Youth Division, Africa Union Commission, and will be giving us opening remarks. She has joined us, as you will all know, that everything is digitalized, and she's on Zoom, and will be giving us opening remarks. Janice, please.
And sustainable development. The Africa Youth Day celebrations aim to increase awareness of and commitment to an investment in youth, and also an increase in strengthened participation and partnerships, as well as increase in intercultural exchanges and understanding among young people. The AUC, through consultation with partners, determines a theme for the day annually. I am delighted to join you today for the commemoration of Africa Youth Month in Uganda. And thank you to the organizers of this event, the National Youth Council, in partnership with SEATINI Uganda, the Uganda Revenue Authority, and Action Aid International Uganda for inviting me. I believe gatherings such as this are an opportunity to ignite the spirit of youth, but more so to take intentional advances to reiterate the importance of young people's engagement in Africa's development. Now, this year, the theme is one I'm particularly excited about, defining the future today, youth-led solutions for building the Africa that we want. Now, the key takeaway for me has always been the Africa that we want. This is a call to action for young people to know that moving forward, it is up to them to shape the new landscape that this continent is going to look like. The hope is that we encourage young Africans to see themselves as integral to achieving Agenda 2063 through amplifying the representation and voices of young Africans through platforms such as this one, where we're discussing youth-led solutions to financing Africa's development through domestic revenue mobilization. Now, Africa Youth Month allows for a spotlight to be shown on individual young African people and highlighting the critical role they play for the development on the continent, especially through different innovative solutions. Undeniably, the COVID-19 disruption has affected so many lives, but it also brought to light the undeniable imagination of the young population. This period ignited and accelerated the use of digital tools to maximize young businesses and different youth-led solutions and initiatives. The African Union continues to empower young people through the 1 million by 2021 initiative. This is through different efforts from member states under which we have provided different opportunities for youth in the areas of education, employment, entrepreneurship, engagement, and health and well-being. So today, as we celebrate every young person across the continent, we say, keep rising. We recognize the commitment and efforts you have been making towards the achievement of Agenda 2063. The many continental activities for Africa Youth Month, or AYM as we call it, will focus on amplifying and highlighting youth excellence, engaging and empowering youth through online forums and conversations, as well as showcasing opportunities that build the capacity of youth. Now, as we continue to engage in Africa Youth Month activities such as this one, let's also remember to be as engaging through the most important space for young people, which is social media. So as mentioned previously by the other speaker, there are hashtags for this specific event. Let's also add hashtag AYM 2021 and hashtag 1 million by 2021. I wish you all a happy Africa Youth Month, and thank you to everybody. Over, back to you.
Janice Kumalo, and that was the Youth Engagement Lead Youth Division from African Union Commission. And like she stated, it's true, most of the youth are on social media, though when you look at the mobile connection in Uganda, it's still very low. But interestingly is that the youth are engaged, and unless we use those platforms, there is a high possibility that we will never reach out to the youth. When you're in this country and you go up country, there is usually a question of who is representing us. I'm glad to say that at least Uganda, we have a representative as the youth in parliament, and as a lady, as you can see, I think we have balanced this discussion. So we also have a female representative in parliament. So if you are one of the entrepreneurs, you're outside there in the field, please make use of these people, inform them what is happening up country, inform them on whatever you think could be addressed, so that they address these issues and bring them to Parliament for discussion. Allow me welcome Mr. Jacob Eyeru, Chairperson, National Youth Council. Please.
Thank you, Ms. Arinda. And I want to start by giving my sincere thanks to the Friends of Young People of Uganda, ActionAid International, Oxfam, the EU, and all those that fund these ideas that we have. But for today, I want to give a special thanks to SEATINI Uganda, who have supported the ideas of the National Youth Council. They believe in the capacity of young people in our country to lead the change that we want to see, but they also believe in collaborations that build a future that we want. I want to thank specifically on the panel, my sister, the National Female Youth Member of Parliament, Honorable Nyamutoro Fiona, for availing time. And it's not easy for those of you that have tried to get MPs for consistent events. But she has been there, the youth MPs as a team have been there, and I'm very encouraged by your resolve in representation. I thank the members of the panel, and Alan here will smile a lot more today. I hope you ask him hard questions as the time goes. I want to thank very much the African Union Youth Division. For those of you that don't know, the African Union now has a new youth envoy for the chairperson of the African Union, a lady from Zimbabwe, where Kumalo comes from. And so I want to congratulate her. But I also want to thank Ms. Janice Zibusiso Gugu Kumalo for joining us and speaking on behalf of the division. I am asked of a very simple task. I'll do it in a very short time because I want the conversation to be here. I am really just going to speak briefly about the need for Africa's youth to bring innovation. But the situation that demands that innovation is the need to finance Africa's development. And that financing is through domestic revenue. Let me start here. The world is trying to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. But the IMF today says Africa in particular needs at least 15.4% increase in our revenue collection capacity to be able to meet critical indicators on Sustainable Development Goals. We are talking about health, we are talking about education, we are talking about access to a good road network, we are talking about access to employment. These four things that are critical to the youth populations of Africa are the areas which will be most affected in terms of sustainable development if Africa does not realize a 15.4% increase in revenue mobilization internally. Now, that could not be any better a situation for us to be meeting here. That could not form any better a reason for why we need these conversations. But the second most important thing for me, for why we need to hold these conversations, is that as a country, as Uganda, we are at least 4 percentage points below the sub-Saharan average of 16.45% on tax to GDP ratio. In other words, other countries are achieving the capacity to get more taxes by 4% more on GDP than Uganda. To put that into context for you, our GDP rose by over 40% in the years from 2011 to 2018. But our GDP, tax to GDP ratio, did not rise. It fluctuated between 12% and 14%. And so what that means is that what you see on TV is a growth on the budget figures. The first year we are spending 20 trillion, the next year we are jumping to 23. The next year we are jumping to 28, they are jumping to 34, and now our budget is at 44 trillion. But the percentage of budget financed by taxation revenue does not increase by more than 1-2 percentage points. And why that should concern you is because government has interest of having 0% financing of our national budget by 2026. So it means that by 2026, as a country, we must have innovated enough to collect enough money to finance the entire budget. The budget will not stop increasing, but the money to finance it has to increase. What do you need and what reality is there? Firstly, our reality is that we are in COVID. COVID does not change the hopes of people. It only changes the predicament they face to access that hope. Our hopes are that you have enough jobs, you have better education, you have good schools, and a booming private sector. But when COVID came, in the first lockdown alone, 90% of micro and small medium enterprises closed for jobs. This is the sector that has the largest composition of private sector jobs. But 90% of the jobs there were laid off. Why? Because they could not keep up. Very good for us is that when we reopened, the resilience of the Ugandan entrepreneurship came up. 93% of those businesses that closed were able to reopen when we reopened the economy. This is a statement of hope. But that hope, that resilience by Ugandans, by young Ugandans, I was has not shown in how much taxation we collect. The country director of ActionAid has just intimated to all of us, and he has put it very clearly. As a country, we cannot have a situation where you're talking about development, but the informal sector is growing. You're talking about development, but the people from whom you cannot collect revenue are increasing. In other words, what we have in Uganda is a situation where our economic growth is not translating into availability of resources for national development. That is a very dangerous situation. That you have more people that are willing to make money for themselves, but they're not willing to pay money to the country to ensure that we have health services, to ensure that we have better roads, to ensure that education is better. Why is this so? Not just on the side of the people, but also on the side of the people that collect taxes. And I'm glad that today we have the Uganda Revenue Authority. The first problem we have is that there must be a fiscal social relationship between people and government. Government on its own part has to give people some sort of confidence that when I pay my taxes, I see what it does. And I am very glad that no one is pretentious about it. Not members in the ruling government, not members in the opposition, not members in the accountability forums that Parliament and my sister sit on. All of us understand that. But we are not preaching that. What we are preaching is the new taxation without getting people to understand why they need to pay taxes, why we need more tax revenue. And that's the conversation that I hope that I can initiate, and I hope this panel can ably present forward. The other problem we have in the country is that you have a very hard way of achieving formality for a business. A young person comes from the ghetto. They just think about doing one thing.
That is to start selling masks, because they have realized that masks are the thing that's going. And there are so many of those kind. They will not speak your fancy English. They just want to know how much profit they'll get today and go home. When you want to encourage that person to pay, even if it is daily taxation, you are not going to use KCCA on the street that's going to tell them we don't want you here. Because they don't stop. They sell what's going. When the rain begins falling, for those of you that use cars and are privileged to have them, when the rains begin falling, you will notice that there are people who are walking on the street as you're in traffic jam, and they have umbrellas. They were not there in the morning, but all of a sudden umbrellas are available. It is the ingenuity, the resilience of young Ugandans, of Ugandans generally, to participate in economic activity. But that is generating income for them. How does the government tap into that income so that our country can become a self-sustainable country? I'll give you a second thing. The second thing is that we have a very big and growing debt to GDP ratio. Now, when you don't collect enough money, your needs don't reduce. Yet, your debt to GDP ratio must increase because your budget is going higher. Ugandans are richer, they expect better. They are connected on social media, they complain more. They are now more in parliament. I can assure you, I know that I and my sister come from the ruling party. But when the Attorney General or the Minister of Finance appears in Parliament, they seem to forget they're from the ruling party and start addressing the needs of Ugandans as the reports clearly indicate. And that is a spirit that you need for national development. But that spirit needs to be reflected also on the institutions that act on behalf of government. The spirit of trying to meet the population midway. That spirit of saying, if this is what many young people are doing, and we want to tap incomes from them, how do you build with them? How do you introduce taxes to them in a way that they accept them? In a way that does not scare them on the road? It is very scary how young people from the ghetto who are not going to earn more than 10,000 in profit a day have to lose a limb, get hurt as they try to run away from law enforcement for taxation. Yet we can have these conversations with them. If we are welcoming on our physical policy, we can be welcoming for them as well on their engagement to be taxed. Finally, I want to say one thing. We are building towards the future as young Ugandans. And that future is Agenda 2063 of the African Union. That future is Vision 2040 of Uganda. Whether we want it or not, addressing our strategic needs now will help our leadership in the future. If we do not address those strategic needs now, of how much more we can gain, how can we enforce a better tax compliant citizenry, but also how do we ensure that the fiscal social contract of government is achieved well, we are heading for doom, because there will be more younger people in the future than we have today. 78% today are below 35, but 50% of that number are below 15. And so we don't know when Ugandans will stop giving birth at the rate they do, but whenever it is, we will be old enough to feel that that number is very large. And if we have not taken strategic advisories and strategic inputs now, we will not have a future that's good. And so what are we doing, and why do we think that you need to engage, as my final statement? Firstly, we believe that we need a very big agenda on Uganda. The National Youth Council will launch a big agenda in February next year, and that big agenda will be looking at how we can use young people to enhance better livelihoods for young people, how we can use young people to increase participation of young people in matters of development and national action, but finally, how we can use young people as a group and responsible citizenry in group action. That big agenda, we hope, will have and solicit the help of people like the African Union, like Sir Xavier, one of my very good friends, my sister Grace and SEATINI, but also at URA and all the organizations and institutions that work on behalf of government. How do we work with young people in the informal sector, young people in the sports sector, young people in all the agricultural value chain possibilities and initiatives? That is how we must approach it. And I'll close my statement by saying, when we are working with young people in the ghetto, we must speak their language. You must say story chi, muliwa chibagai, mukola bichi, era tukwasaganyiza wa. That language that meets the young person at their capacity, at their knowledge base, and gets them included and welcome. I thank you all, and I hope we learn a lot today. Thank you.
Sorry, Chiba guy. I recently saw Mama Janet also greeting us that hi guys on Twitter. And I've seen the president saying Bazukulu. And it takes me back to, do we really understand, especially, I know you are my friend Isaac, they've sent you because you're in our age bracket. When you talk about revenue mobilization or tax, do you think Ugandans, before we get to the youth, understand? Because each time I see us on Twitter saying tax has increased, I usually ask people, which tax? Is it general? Is it VAT? Is it payee? Which tax? And when you ask, few will answer that question. So it all goes back to each and every individual in our society, that you educate, and even when you're engaging everyone in that language they understand, make them understand that tax is this, revenue. And talking about revenue, I don't think we can talk about revenue when we are not talking about these income generating activities, because you tax what has been earned. So if we Ugandans, I'm an entrepreneur, I own a coffee company, and I can tell you that the struggle to become an entrepreneur in Uganda, I can say thanks to the government for creating the environment. However, the environment is a bit shady also, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm lucky that I started my company as an online one, so by the time COVID hit, I was already into the online business. But when Facebook shut down, I asked myself, did they call us before they did that? Did they call all the stakeholders and the youth? And I'm glad I have the female representative in Parliament for the youth, and I have the chairperson. I don't know whether they engaged you to ask you how many people benefit from this, especially from the people you're representing. When also tax on the internet came up as they were dropping OTT, most people say, like my chairperson said, that comes from the ruling party. I might not disclose my party, but as well, I usually ask people, when I ask these questions, usually the youth, when you defend the government, you're NRM. When you ask questions, they say you're anti-government. But at what level is government willing to have these discussions? When it comes to policy making, the entire process, do we engage the society? Does everyone understand why they need to pay taxes? And if they need to, the question is, which we will get into that discussion, is when taxes come up, tax policies come up, and we see them being implemented, the important question that every Ugandan asks themselves, what are we mobilizing this revenue for? What is it for? So join the discussion online and on NTV, please, with the hashtag, raise your questions. This is your day for the youth. And for our judges, this is also your day to ask us questions. because you usually say the youth don't understand. So make us understand today, join the discussion. Thanks to the organizers, which is SEATINI, and the stakeholders, that is European Union, Action Aid, and National Youth Council Uganda, and of course, Uganda Revenue Authority. Next is the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jacqueline Arinda, to remind you, and I'm the moderator. With me here, I have the very important people, and that includes Isaac Jagenda, Supervisor Tax Education, Uganda Revenue Authority. You can wave to people so that they know who is. They might think I'm lying. So we couldn't manage to have a representative from the Ministry of Finance, but will be joining us, and in case he does, I'll let you know. But with us, we also have Martha Kateike, Executive Director, Kateike Farm Foundation. I hope I pronounced your name very well. Thank you. And lastly is Mr. Alan Muhereza Murangira, Team Leader, Youth for Tax Justice Network. Did I say lastly? No way, no way. And a surprise, I was seeing a discussion saying that we don't have women to discuss very important discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, a hand clap for the National Female Youth Member of Parliament Representative, Fiona Nyamtoro. You're welcome. I don't want to start with you, Uganda Revenue Authority, because they might say, I'm after them, but the discussion, to take you back to the discussion, is youth-led solutions financing Africa's development through domestic revenue mobilization. So that is why Uganda Revenue Authority is important. Or put it in my language, they say importanta. Now, Fiona, one would ask, looking at actually Uganda being rated the most entrepreneurial country, and it was women that were leading actually. Women, if you go downtown, if you look at girls, the makeup artists, if you look at entrepreneurs like my friend Keitake, if you look at women engaging in this entire discussion, do you think we've been well represented when it comes to tax policy process making?
Thank you, Jackie. I did not get an opportunity to greet you. So since my chairperson introduced the new greeting now, I would love to say Storechi Jackie. And Storechi Bagai to all the people that have been able to attend this session today. I like the note on which this discussion has started. When the chairperson of the National Youth Council was speaking, I felt like we should just close the discussion and go and wait for feedback, because he entirely sailed through all the questions that we want to have answers for today. When you ask about women being well catered for in as regards to the tax policy, it stretches further than just the gender narrative, because it is entirely not just about women, it is about Uganda, a young population that you would be right to say are young people well catered for when it comes to the tax policy. I am glad that we have the head of the tax policy education from URA today. I don't know whether it is weird to say, I did not even know that that docket exists, because the gap, the information gap that is out there among the young people, among citizens of Uganda as general, in as regards to information about the tax policy is very alarming. We could just start by, in this room, I don't know how many of us would confidently raise our hands and say, I can explain Uganda's tax policy. If we do not have people in this room, then what would you imagine out there? I think where we are coming from as a developing country, we appreciate that we have been growing on a foundation of foreign aid. A bitter pill that many developing countries such as Uganda have to take to cure and control deficit budgets. Now, I do not know very well as per now whether we have attained that level of confidence that we are sure we can achieve financial independence, to talk about resource mobilization. I do not know whether we are comfortable enough to hold a discussion on how best we can mobilize resources for development when people do not understand why exactly they should pay tax, when people cannot justify the debt burden that the country is having, and us as young people, the dilemma is that we are not just planning for today, because we are young today, but we are also the future. So we plan now and plan for generations ahead. The resources we are talking about mobilizing, are they going to prioritize citizen welfare now, or are they going to lessen the debt burden that we are to deal with as a country? Those are very many questions, and I'm sure very many more that Ugandans out there are asking. And it is entirely incumbent on us as leaders, and incumbent on government as well, to ensure that we invest so much in tax education. Just having the literacy of a citizen reaching a situation where they do not have to question whether they should pay tax or not. Unfortunately or fortunately, that justification is only evident on service delivery, because the extent, the efforts of resource mobilization out there depend on the perception Ugandans have between the linkage of taxes paid and the public services that are enjoyed. So who is not playing their role right? Is it the citizens or is it government? And there is no any other person that can hold the responsibility of strengthening the physical social contract other than government itself. How best do we enhance URA's administrative capacity to collect revenue, but also how best do we ensure that the citizens, the women, the young people are very comfortable with paying tax and have the confidence in government that issues like corruption are not going to be in the way, that services will be affordable, available, and they really see the reason. I don't think there is any person out there who would have an issue paying tax if they knew, if they understood that if I am paying this tax today, I can be able to access a health facility tomorrow. I can be able to access my social needs. The only problem we are having as developing countries is that we have been overridden by the justifications of development and the definitions that are set by international standards. As a scholar myself, the most sensible definition I have found of development is human development, which simply means that if you're to have a strong tax base, it can only be translated and mirrored through the livelihood of the people. If the livelihood of the people is better, then you should be sure that your tax base can become stronger. If we are having economic growth statistics rising positively, but the impact is not felt on ground, where is the gap in between?
Fiona, you just mentioned that government needs to play a role in making everyone understand that corruption will be dealt with and the revenue collected will be allocated to, I wouldn't love to say to the sectors that matter, but best allocated. Don't you think as a member of parliament, that is one of your role?
It is my role on the legislative part. You see, there's always a misconception whenever us members of parliament refer to government, then people ask, oh, but you're government yourself. When I am referring to government in this context, I am referring to the executive wing of government. Now, talking about the policy part, because a tax policy cannot thrive where there is a vacuum. and any other policy, so will the effect of revenue mobilization. And in a young country as Uganda, it is not possible to mobilize resources without the young people. Then whom are you going to mobilize them from? If UBOS is releasing reports, the latest report I ever read was of 2019. They said 90.5% of young people are in the informal sector, what others would refer to the untaxed economy. How best do we translate that into revenue collection? How best do we tap into the productive labor that is out there of young people in the name of unemployment and translate it into a potential revenue source that it should be?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fiona, and I think you have a very important point that if you don't have the youth in this entire discussion and outside there, then that means that you will be getting the opposite, which will lead us to our revenue, because currently everyone says, no, we are not collecting enough, and that's why we have to go outside there and have some support, some funds coming in. But to Isaac, Uganda Revenue Authority.
Yes, Jackie.
Yes, when I was meeting you, you said, no, I hope there are no hard questions. Trust me. I want you to have your water in case of anything.
No.
It's too early.
It's too early. Yeah, but how best do you think Uganda Revenue Authority can bridge the gap between tax administration and SMEs?
Thank you so much, Jackie, and I also want to take this opportunity to thank the previous speakers. We had a very good remark from the chairperson of the Youth Council. It opened my mind more, and actually it's going to guide the kind of deliberations we are going to make today. When you look at the domestic revenue mobilization strategy, it emphasizes involving taxpayers into the tax policy formulation and issues to do with tax administration. And when we talk of involving taxpayers, you cannot involve without engaging. Okay, so, and when we look at the engagement of taxpayers, we, as URA, we have a corporate plan and a strategy that we are driving for the next 5 years. And one of the pillars of that corporate plan, the strategy, is strengthening stakeholder collaboration. We have quite a number of interventions that URA has on table to strengthen stakeholder collaboration. And one of them is what I'm representing here today, because I'm currently managing the tax education unit. So tax education in itself is one of the key pillars that are going to help us, are going to lead us to where we want to be. Tax education as a tool is very important in bringing the youth on board. And I want to thank my colleague, Fiona. She mentioned it, that yes, URA needs to do more, and government needs to strengthen the tax education capacity and efforts around the country. Now, I will just make a few remarks about some of the things that URA has done and is doing to ensure that we bring everyone on board. When you look at our tax education strategy is multi-pronged. Yes, we have 3 pillars that govern the strategy. We have awareness, we have empowerment, and nurturing. Those are the 3 driving pillars for our tax education. For every engagement and every activity that we do, everything we do in terms of putting information out there, we are either raising awareness or we are empowering someone. And when we talk of empowerment, I have my colleague here, Kataike, who probably has a teen and they've registered already, they have a business, and they want to know, how do I file my return, for example? Or they want to know, what are the investment opportunities that are in the sector in which I am operating? So we are empowering this taxpayer with knowledge. But when we talk of awareness, we have so many platforms that we've used to create awareness. And part of them, we have the mass media. We have a presence and we have strong stakeholder collaborations with the media houses and the many media channels that we have. One of the speakers commented about the characteristics of young people. One of them is that they are tech savvy, okay? Now, being tech savvy, as URA, we have not slept on the job in terms of technology. I'll tell you, we have been online for over 15 years, and it's a journey. Yes, I know we've not yet reached there, but yes, we have made some strides to ensure that where the young people are, we can also be there. Because in this day and age, digitalization is one of the main solutions that is going to bring and also try to bridge the informal sector. We still have challenges, especially to do issues to do with e-commerce, trying to get into those other, businesses that are not bringing a contribution to the basket. However, we shall sort that with time. Just also to let our viewers know this morning that URA as an institution, when you look at the domestic revenue mobilization strategy, it talks about empowering URA and doing what we call administrative reforms that will enable URA to bring that extra coin home and to bridge that gap that my colleague was talking about, that 4%. We have to bridge the tax to GDP ratio gap. But how are we doing that? We have structural changes that have happened in the past few months, and this we have in this we have a whole new division in charge of research and innovation. Okay? Yes, and that is just in addition to what we already have as a structure. And we have actually, in this new structure at the Uganda Revenue Authority, we have IT that has been elevated. So the institution is looking at tax education, but also looking at IT, because you cannot do much in this day and age without putting a focus and investing resources in IT.
Yeah, thank you so much, Isaac. And I think when it comes to tax education, like Chairperson said, change on the language so that it suits
Yes.
everyone. Now, to Keitake, who owns a farm foundation and is in the agriculture sector, how best do you think, when it comes to resource and revenue mobilization, how best do you think agriculture sector can play a role in this, especially the youth?
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Martha Kataike. Yeah. So we can best play. Yeah, it's slow. Our performances are entirely going to be based on a symbiotic relationship with the tax administration. Well, the tax administrators are doing their role, because when you look at the DRM strategies, they are beautifully written, they are good, that if the implementers and legislators come together and they have a relationship and one goal towards its delivery, it can be attained. But for as long as there is a missing link in between, we as SMEs in the agriculture sectors, a handful are benefiting, but as a representative of them, I'm still struggling in that area. I am still struggling in that area, but still there is hope though. There is hope, because just being here on this platform and given an opportunity to come and represent the people in the informal sector is a clear indication that there is something that is the tax wing is willing to do for us in the informal sector. And I wish to let Isaac know that if we who are into the agribusiness, mostly the rural youth, are supported by the government or the tax system through the finances, I'm sure nobody out there is not going to look through the strategies, the objectives of the DRMs and say, no, I can't stand for this. Of course, they are willing. But then, when you look at things that you want to feel the tax with you, from when I'm clearing the ground, I want to feel that, I am with this, I'm a team into the tax. When I go to the market, I want to feel I am in the team. I have a team with the tax administration. But then if the issue here is like, even when you look at the infrastructure, like if for instance I do tomatoes, right from my garden to the market, the roads. I'm transporting the roads, and I'm 30 now. I've grown up seeing this road this way. But there's always been a policy, I've had the parliament, I've had discussions that come up where they're willing to actually work on these issues. But I feel like there is a missing link between the tax legislator and the implementers, that if they sit together and say, what is the way forward? How can we work on this? Then we, people who are into the agriculture sector, we will be able to benefit. We will be able to benefit. And I also hope that we have a better relationship with the tax administration, whereby we are friends. It's not about, this is a policy. If someone is your friend, even when you have something you want to put across, you let them know in advance. So if we are literally friends, the tax administrator will know that. If I'm going to Taleja, I'm going to translate these things in the Lunyoli. I'll have a sector of people who go around in every home, because there are rice growers who are very wealthy. But you have to have a better relationship with them.
Martha, you clearly said you're challenged in your sector. Apart
Yes.
from the infrastructure, as a businesswoman, what
Yeah.
exactly do you mean challenged when it comes to revenue mobilization? Is it because of what they do? Is it how they collect it? Is it a tax policy that does not apply to your sector? What are the key challenges?
I wouldn't say it's tax policies, because when you look at the COVID-19 funds that came, other regions like in the north, most people got the resources. But when you look at our region, most people haven't got the resources.
Which region is that?
The Betaleja.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I was saying that maybe it's the issue between the implementers and the legislators that needs to be fixed, because the policy is very good. But then when it comes to the ground, it is not laid down as it is said out here. So the person out there at the countryside who's also willing to pay tax needs to feel like, well, if it's working in the other region, why isn't it working here? If it's not working, then there has to be a way forward. Yeah, and then they have to involve us when they're making this. For instance, if for instance the COVID fund, they have to involve regions. What is your need? Needs assessment. What someone in the northern region requires as an agriculturist is not what someone in Taleja requires, because we are in a swampy area, the other people are in a dry area. So there you know exactly where you're putting the money. Then you are going to put something that someone in Taleja doesn't need, and you're going to waste taxes. So come to the ground, ask people who are representing, and say, what do you need on the ground such that you are able to be more productive, that you're in a position to pay taxes. But if someone is struggling and not feeling the arms of the government, then it will feel like it's a war to get the money. Yet the goals and objectives of that particular program are very beautiful. You're not aiming at exploiting them, you're aiming at bettering them, but they will not feel it unless you work with them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kataike. I think you make a very brilliant point, which Fiona had highlighted, that it is important that when it comes to allocation of these resources and using these funds, that the society or Ugandans understand why is it being used for this purpose and not the other purpose. So here comes Alan Muhereza, Team Leader Youth for Tax Justice Network. Gathering the information that we have right now, I think now we can call ourselves researchers. What what can be done? Because I know Uganda Revenue Authority, its mandate is to collect taxes. But we also have the other side where they spend, let's say, for example, I've seen on Twitter, most people ask, they call themselves taxpayers. Each time I see someone dashing out money, the youth usually say, that's a tax money, that is our money. Then I see URA saying, it is because of you in the campaign that we have Uganda Airlines, it is because of you, because we have this road. But when a URA is asked that, where is this revenue going? They say, that's not our mandate. So what can be done so that the gap between the collector and the party that is engaged in resource allocation, they bridge it up so that the community can be compliant when it comes to tax collection? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Oh, good afternoon to our viewers and those that are here. I'm Heriza Alan, team leader, Chief for Tax Justice Network. I think before answering that, I think it will be a disservice if we confined domestic revenue mobilization to just taxation. Of course, taxation is the most sustainable way a country can finance its development agenda. But as young people, it would be a disservice to ourselves if we just limited this conversation to just taxation, because other ways of raising revenue have a very big impact, both on taxation itself, but also on the way that we do certain things that we do as a country, or the way we fund things we do, or the way we even choose our priorities as a country. So I thought I should say that, for example, Chairperson talked about something that is very important, debt. For example, if you look at the relationship between taxation and debt, that is something that young people should be interested in, or should interest young people. So for me, that's where I start from, that whereas true, taxation is the most sustainable of financing our development agenda, but it is also a question of fair taxation. And I think we must also look at the context we are operating in. When we talk about young people, there is a context of inequality, for example. Jacob gave certain statistics about growth in GDP, stagnant tax to GDP ratio. So the question would be, where is this growth happening? Is it meant to us to believe that it is happening within the informal sector? Or are there people, or are there entities that are actually making resources but are very savvy in terms of accounting, are very savvy in terms of benefiting from some of these double taxation agreements and all that, and not pay? So that's the second thing, the context, that even from the word go, young people are at a disadvantage. That if you look at where the resources are, the chances are that young people don't have those resources. If you look at where money is right now, if we took a sample to young people, how many have these in their pockets? So that is the second thing, that the context in which we are having these discussions, and that is why this conversation is very important for young people, because we have to know first where the money is before we tell young people. And I want to disagree with someone who said that we will be happy to pay taxes if we see where resources are going. I think naturally no one ever wants to pay tax, whether you have resources or not, because it's painful to. So that is the starting point, that anyone given an opportunity would avoid tax. But the issue of that social contract that we've been talking about, and that's why also, again, I feel like URA has been also done a disservice, because revenue mobilization is beyond administration. And if you look at the DRMS, it identifies three areas: the political economy, the politics of taxation. Tax and foremost is a political issue. That's why tax is a reserve of parliament. You cannot have a tax without legislators, without our representatives agreeing or disagreeing to it. So the politics of taxation have to be talked about. Then you look at the tax system itself, and you look at now what everyone is talking about here, the administration. So that's why we're saying that URA is in a disservice, because there are even instances where, for example, where it comes up, and I'll give an example. says that I think every border should pay a certain amount, and someone says we cannot tax those people, and that is policy. It becomes policy. So I think to really give this conversation justice, we have to start from that broader level, that taxation is a tool of power. Taxation is actually political, and I'm glad our representative for young people is here, that for any tax that is made or repealed should be in the benefit or for the benefit of young people. If we're to raise resources through taxation, they should be for the benefit of young people. If you should add a tax, and I remember when we were having this conversation around the mobile money tax in the finance committee, and we were saying that if you looked at, for example, the agents, if you look at the example for people that were basically going to be affected by this tax, they were not people in offices, they were not people in, but that brings us to the function, and I think Fiona said that it's only legislative, but there is also oversight. Parliament can call you. I remember there is a time Parliament refused to pass a budget, I think it must have been of health, and said if you don't put money in this, we shall not pass the budget. And actually government came back and did what Parliament said. So that is the third thing. But me, also this conversation will not be done justice if we don't look at, especially for young people. I know there have been a lot of talk about young people being able to do their own businesses, make your own employment and all that. So how do we then have this conversation in the context of investment? Where we say, for example, do young people have access to credit to invest? And for those that don't have credit, or for those that have credit, why I'm talking about this is of the situation, or of the situation we're in, for example, when it comes to direct foreign investment. When we say we need investment, so that in order for us to get investment, we have to do away with certain taxes, for example, or we have to create a certain category of people that must not pay taxes because we need that investment. So also I think, and I would want to hear from this conversation and from people online or people here, that how then do we as young people strategize and position ourselves in an area where we are saying first we need investment, but also we are saying as a government, it's also policy now that for certain people that come out to say they are investing, they're not going to contribute to this revenue that we are talking about. And yet, in most cases, the tax incentives themselves are not why they invest. They're not why they come here. So I thought, I know that time is not enough, but for us to really benefit from this, and it's important for young people for two reasons. One, because I think Xavier talked about this, Jacob talked about this, but for any youth priority to be met, it requires resources. Initially, when we talked about resource mobilization, people looked at it from the social economic side of things, schools, health, social security. But even if you talked, for example, about political and civil rights, for example, you need resources to enforce those rights. You need resources to have judges appointed. You need resources to hold elections. You need resources to do most of these things that we think are on the other side of things. So that is the first thing, that for any solution that young people might have, and we've been having these conversations even around the Africa Free Continental Trade area, where they're telling us it's going to remove ABCD, you need to have resources to invest in young people. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if we don't, thank you, if we don't get these resources, we also suffer the most for two reasons. One, we are going to be here the longest. But also, if you look at the way governments have been responding, especially, for example, to deficits, we borrow more. I was seeing in the DRMS that for every 1 shilling, for every 5 shillings that government collects, 1 is spent on paying or repaying back debt. So, and that is debt accrued now, right now, that is going to be paid over time. So those are conversations that we are first the biggest beneficiaries, but also we are the biggest losers. And in all this, we can be the drivers of this agenda. So I think because of time I could stop there, but I think I would also want to hear what other people are thinking about this, especially within the context that we've discussed this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. And good enough, we still have some time. So Fiona will have to defend herself. But I totally also believe that we are willing to pay taxes. On the contrary, we are more than willing. But first,
it is the unpatriotic side of Alan that was speaking then.
I guess so, because seriously speaking, is that once we know where this money is going to be spent, and once we know that, for example, I was sharing with Isaac, and I told Isaac that URA needs to understand that the structures they had 10 years ago to actually to collect revenue might not apply to the current kind of structures we have. I was giving him an example of makeup artists. They make more money. Look at photographers. Those are the jobs that never existed. And there are photographers in the photography industry that do not register their company. They are called upon by SEATINI, they are called upon by Parliament to take photos, weddings, but they never register. But you come to Jada Coffee or Katie Farm, who has registered a company, and you start taxing me. So the question of the tax base, I totally agree with the, yes, let me just conclude, and then I call you on and take the floor with Fiona, is that we need to increase the tax base, because I'm bringing this point actually, Alan, so that you understand that we are willing. I reach a point where I see a makeup artist, a photographer, all these people that are not taxed, the mechanics that have garages and have not registered them, basically even out of apprenticeship, the jobs out of apprenticeship, and jobs have been created because the world is evolving each and every day, and they are not taxed. But I feel I'm more taxed. So that brings me to you, where I would say, no, I'm not paying taxes because so and so is earning better than me. If you look at Uganda Investment Authority, by the definition of SMEs, up to now it is puzzling me how you define an SME by the returns and number of employees, when in actual sense someone can be, I looked at small, it's 10 million, and then I said, but there's some people who is just one in the company. For small, they say 4 employees and 10 million, I think, for returns. But there are companies that just have 1 person and is working online and is earning 40 million. Just 1 person. For you, you're waiting for companies that have employees of 100 so that you tax them, but there is this 1 person who is earning more than me that you're taxing. So I believe that if they let us know, but let me allow Alan and Fiona take the debate.
60 seconds.
Yes.
What I said, maybe that from the word go, no one ever wants to pay tax. Let me ask people here, how many of you would want to pay tax? I don't think we are being honest. And that's why we have tax evasion and avoidance. Not because, but also maybe as Fiona comes on, I was putting that because that is usually the starting point. And everything about the social contracts now comes in to mitigate that. That I don't want to pay in the first place, but I'll pay maybe because ABC happens. But no one really ever pays tax willingly.
Before you go to, I want Fiona to defend herself.
She's going to. The last thing I wanted to also throw a spanner in the works is about the informal economy. And me personally, I don't. Whereas it is big, and what I believe efforts should be taken to actually look for where the money is. And I'll give an example. I usually give this example that in one transaction, one tallow transaction, the government of Uganda got about $460 million from one transaction. And what I usually ask is, how many people selling masks, for example, how many people selling apples, how many people doing that would you have to tax to get 460 million? But this one, you tax and get in one transaction. So it means that actually money is there. We just have to look for it. And for me personally, I don't think the informal sector, well, it contributes, it has part of the growth, but I believe that money is in multinational companies. I believe money is in these big tech company giants, and we just have 5 ways of taxing them. Because if in the extractive sector, for example, even before oil comes up, you tax interest, and you get 400 million. So the question would then be, how many people downtown, how many people on the streets would you have to tax to get that sort of revenue. But of course, I'm also not saying that people shouldn't pay. Like we said, this is about fair taxation. Everyone should be able to pay their fair share of tax.
Thank you, Alan, and allow me call upon Fiona to tell us, because you can see, actually by the show of hands, how many people would like to pay taxes? By the show of hands, even those ones that are on the Zoom, please. Yes, please. Fiona, please.
Jackie, it's just more clear now that Isaac should recruit Alan as one of the first beneficiaries of tax education from this session, because the indication here from the show of hands shows you that Ugandans are willing to pay tax. They only need a justification of service delivery in return, because no one would be willing to spend their money when they do not know of what use the expenditure is going to be to them. So I think this debate is closed.
Thank you, Fiona, for summarizing it. And I think, Alan, when we are having a cup of coffee, 3 of us or 4 of us, we can have this discussion. But back to Alan. As you well know, back to Isaac, sorry, as Alan has stated that before we even think about collecting taxes, we need to invest. Yes. And there is just one example of a border man who came to Kampala after selling their land to come to Kampala. Then there is an investor who is being given that same land maybe to invest and is given all the benefits, tax holidays, you know. Just to summarize it, which tax incentives, and don't generalize and say the agriculture sector, which tax incentives are really encouraging the youth to get into investment?
Thank you, Jackie. When you look at the national budget for this financial year, it was under the theme Industrialization for Inclusive Growth, Employment and Wealth Creation. This theme, it's premised on the fact that the 1.5 years we've been in COVID, the 1.5 years we've been in this COVID situation, we have seen there are sectors that have actually been badly hit, but also there are those that have actually that have done well. And COVID has given us lessons to learn that yes, there are things that we used to import that we could not do without, but now we are making them ourselves here. You saw during COVID, and I want to lead this to your the kind of answer you want to me to give. We had companies that are making alcohol now have shifted to making sanitizers. But you see, that shows you that the economy actually has the capacity to actually, you know, produce goods that support. We have industries that can support this. Now, what does that tell us? That if government has focused on industrialization, when we look at industries, there is a whole value chain in the industrial sector, okay? So, you talked of a border man who has left the village and is coming to Kampala to look for maybe a coin, daily bread. Yes, there are incentives that have been put, especially in the agriculture sector, but even industry. We have for example, if someone is investing in agriculture, the inputs, just to let our viewers know, most of the inputs that we use, the hose, the milk cans, all those things, they are tax-free. But what you need to do is just to make sure that you're registered as a farmer and you formalize. You must be well known through the structures. The message we are talking about here, and to kill and to reduce that 52% informal sector, is we need to really take up formalization, registration through the relevant authorities, the farming bodies, the Uganda Tourism Board, the Hotel Owners Association, because most of the incentives that government has put are actually, when you look at the conditions that have been attached, one of the major conditions is someone needs to be registered, and that means they must be formal. So we are trying to tackle the informal sector. Now, there are so many things that someone can actually do in this economy that government has incentivized. For long, we've been importing things like honey. peanut butter. Those are things that are made.
You actually also import coffee.
Yes.
Yeah, I had Nescafe somewhere there, and I was shocked.
Wow. So you would imagine why we are not actually, we are still importing these things. And government, my colleague Fiona will testify, the policies that have been passed in Parliament, the industrialization policy is focusing so much on import substitution to make sure that we invest heavily home, have people involved in the agriculture sector produce and supply the industries that you talked about, that investor who is coming to put money in an industry, but also the person who is in the village, who is growing the groundnuts, the simsim, can produce that peanut butter and sell it on the market. What has government done to make sure they incentivize this person? Government has ensured that we have these products that are coming from out are actually having a higher import duty rate to make sure that they do not outcompete our products on the market. So import substitution comes with, first of all, make the imported products higher in terms of cost, give them a higher cost, but incentivize the local producers. And that is an opportunity that our youth need to look into.
Thank you so much.
Jackie, just a minute before Isaac goes off. There's this question that young people posed to me, and I think Isaac is in the best position to answer it right now. Why does an expatriate who earns income in Uganda not pay tax?
Okay. It is not true that expatriates do not pay tax. The question then would be the income that there is a condition for someone to pay tax in Uganda according to the income tax laws. They must meet certain conditions, especially in regards to residence. How long have they spent in Uganda? Are they employed? How are they investing here? Do they have a business? So I think we would need to contextualize and find out who exactly that kind of expatriate is. Maybe
but you are aware that if you traveled out of Uganda, even if you were to purchase a pen, it would be taxed, whether you are working or not.
I think you can see.
Can I also help Isaac? No, I just wanted to respond to Honorable that, like I said earlier on, tax is a creature of statute. It's a legislative function. So I think we should actually be asking you that why don't you legislate? If these people are not paying, why don't you legislate so that they pay?
I am in the process of that. That's why I'm asking URA, the revenue collector, why they exempted this particular.
No.
Fiona, it is because it's the same question that I was asking Alan, and he avoided it, because I said the gap between the legislator is really, really huge. Because as URA, their mandate is to collect taxes. That if, wait a bit, that if Parliament or the policy comes up, just like they pass it in the Parliament, URA will have to implement without question. That's why when it comes to even asking URA that where is our money, the money that you're collecting, they don't have the answer. And I was asking Alan, how can they give us answers? We are asking, where are you putting the money that we are collecting? And secondly, why is it that we see investors in this country? And I want Isaac to understand, as you're representing Uganda Revenue Authority, as the youth, if we are heading for the future, and we are planning for the future, then it is important that Kaiteke, all other entrepreneurs understand that you are focusing on them, because the tax incentives which Fiona is raising is that it looks like you are promoting more foreign investment than than us, actually, that the youth even access to finance. I wish we had someone from the bank on this panel, on this same panel, even access to finances. Youth, we are eliminated. It's so bad that even when I bring it to even women, it's so bad that we don't inherit land, but we are asked for land titles when we want to have money. Yet they well know that in African society and culture and beliefs, some of us do not inherit any property, but when you're asked that you should present a land title, then you're asked, then my brother takes the entire title and gets funds. So the gap between URA and Parliament in simple English is huge, and that's why we are on this platform, that we need answers. Unfortunately, before I break out, I think Kaitake has something to say as I open the discussion to scientists online, and actually a few scientists that I have here, and those ones online. You can join the discussion on NTV with just a hashtag Africa Youth Day and Youth for Tax Justice. My name is Jacqueline Arinda, and with me here I have Mr. Alan Muhere Zamlanjira as the team leader, Youth for Tax Justice Network, and I have Fiona Nyamtoro, National Female Representative in Parliament. We also have Kaitake of Farm Foundation. Direct to those questions, no matter how hot they are. We have provided some water here, so in case it heats up, they have the water. So please, Kaitake.
Yeah, I just want to add some, to make an analysis on what Isaac said about imports. So my analysis is, instead of adding a fee on the export, on the product imported in our country, why doesn't the URA help the local producer on improving the quality of their product, like finance them such that the quality of the product they're producing matches up what they actually want to import. For instance, if you're importing coffee and you know you have a local producer of coffee, why don't you actually empower them enough to produce the same quality that you are expected of what you're importing? You know, instead of saying we are going to import and add a fee on them, don't import, empower this to the domestic producer to produce the quality that matches up exportation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keitake. In fact, if we are talking to government, they should consider UPDF, because I've seen them joining the sector and they are doing wonderful things outside there. Let it be furniture, let it be biscuits. Recently, I saw also something else I can't mention, but I was like, thanks to you, PDF. Now, opening the discussion to people the few scientists that have joined this discussion, I would like to, the gentleman with the microphone, please. Yes. Please, the discussion has been open to the audience. The gentleman has the microphone. Put up your hand, and we will come straight to you. Just 4 or 5 minutes. Thank you. Introduce yourself and then direct your question to any of these members. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Jackie. My name is Tumwesiga Derek. I'm the Secretary for Finance, Kiliandongo District Youth Council. My question goes to Isaac. We have seen our tax system being so biased to an extent that we have different stakeholders in Uganda, maybe for instance like legislators, not being taxed, and they again task a younger man like me who has a small project, maybe dealing in poultry, piggery and so on, in rural areas of Chiliandongo. I'm just starting, by they tax me, but they leave out these big investors, the legislators, and so on, not being taxed. And now, it affects me as a person, and I get so biased to pay this tax. As URA, what are you trying to put in place to help young people who have small projects like mine to come up in this COVID era? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And there is another gentleman on the second table, please. We shall receive questions, and I'm sure the panelists will be taking note.
Thank you so much. I'm Solomon Aleper. I'm a student of medicine and surgery in my final year, Makerere University. But I'm glad to be part of this discussion. I have a few questions, and I will direct them to Isaac. I'm sorry, Isaac, I think most questions will come your way. One, I am not very good at taxes and economics, like I've already introduced myself, but I think I'll touch on a few things that I think are basics for me to understand. I'll start with the DFI, the direct foreign investment. I think you gave a hint to an idea of, I think it was Honorable Nyamtoro who hinted on the expatriates. And I think somewhat those are part of maybe the DFI. Maybe you'll correct me if I have to. I think I want some clarity on how best the Ugandan government, and of course we the youth, being the center of this discussion, benefit in terms of the direct foreign investment and the monitoring of URA, of the collection of taxes. The other thing is maybe the idea of the URA linkage between the government's arms of wealth creation. There is operation wealth creation, there is a MIOGA, and then there is the parish model. So I want to understand, as URA, Mr. Isaac, how do you tap in to make sure that there is good monitoring of the collection of taxes from the investments that are put by government, and how do the youth benefit? Because in the end, the struggle is that we advance the agenda of youth towards, attaining the SDGs. So that's just my question. I hope I get.
Thank you so much. I would request the person with the microphone, please. There is a gentleman on this front table. But before that, there is Mr. Alan Mohereza Mlanjira, who is team leader, Youth for Tax Justice Network, in case you have questions for him too. There is also Martha Keitake, Executive Director, Chitake Foundation, and Fiona Nyamtoro, National Female Youth Member of Parliament. A kind reminder, our theme is Youth-Led Solutions Financing Africa's Development Through Domestic Revenue Mobilization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Daniel Bill Opio. I am a lawyer, a cybersecurity innovator as well with Ad Security. Youth-Led Solutions Financing Africa's Development Through Domestic Revenue Mobilization. I feel heavily that we haven't done justice to the theme at hand. I mean, we are talking about raising revenue, but I think revenue comes from the business that is happening within a country. So our focus should actually be on how to empower businesses of young people to be able to pay the revenue. What our economy is doing is trying to squeeze as many golden eggs as possible out of the golden goose, but that goose will die. For instance, we introduced in 2018 the over-the-top services tax, which actually we went to court for, and court played us a number. They did, let me speak in the generic language of the youths of these days, they did a number on us and gave us a hearing date only after the tax had been removed. So to try to, pose a situation that they're actually responsive. But we have a very reactionary system of approach to things, even as civil society. I think if we want to be very proactive and prove that we are doing something to help raise revenue amongst young people, we need to guide the narrative on issues like taxation of the digital economy to avoid those, out of the blue OTT taxes, then 12%, which is not empirical. There is no justification. There are no numbers to buttress why government came up with a 12% tax. Now, the internet has become the integrator and the enabler of businesses for the past 2 years. We see in the previous discussion with the African Free Trade Continental Agreement, we were discussing about e-business cross-border, and that is where the world is going. So the discussion is about e-taxation, even of businesses that are integrated outside of the country that don't have that ordinary brick and mortar style of residence within the country. So I feel like we have really been very exoteric in our response to the theme, and in my opinion, we've not done justice to it at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Africa Youth Day celebrations are still going on, and there was a discussion on about supporting entrepreneurs in the entire Africa, and I can assure you that I will invite you on that other discussion. So the reason why we focused on revenue mobilization, as you can see, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. But I hope your question will be addressed lastly. Let's have one question. We have only 5 minutes remaining to wind up this entire discussion.
Thank you. A good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob Raymond Kabango. I'm also, I work with Uganda Small Scale Industries Association. I'm not a youth, but the youth are a section that the Uganda Small Scale Industries Association holds so dear, and I think as an association we've done a lot to see that the youth are supported. My two questions, one is to Muhereza, due to your demand, Madam Marinda, and the other is to our policy maker, Madam Fiona. To Mr. Muhereza, my question is, have there been any policies that have put in place specifically for taxes? Are there any policies that have been put in place to support the young youth entrepreneurs that are trying to start their businesses and see how they can support it? My question to Madam Fiona, Honorable, is, as a government, of course, you realize there's been a lot of youth unemployment, and we appreciate the efforts that the government is putting in form of supporting the youth through the different projects, Emyoga and the rest. However, you realize that from what people have been discussing here, tax policies have also remained very unfavorable. Specifically for me, who is from the Uganda Small Scale Industries Association, we work a lot with the small, the micros, and the startups, who are actually also taxed. When you look at the different taxes, from the income tax to the VAT and all that, by the end of the computation, someone is paying up to 50% of what they are getting out of their businesses. Can government be able to come up with policies that will actually create a breathing space for these small scale and micro entrepreneurs? Because as government taxes, there's also need to also be mindful of the sustainability and continuity of these entrepreneurs. So if you tax them heavily in their first 2-3 years, and then they're not able to move further for the 5-6 years, then where will you get the tax? So my point is, can government put in place taxes, or rather policies, to specifically favor these entrepreneurs who are just starting, the micros as well as the startups, to see how they can get on their feet, then they can be able to pay these taxes comfortably. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me have Mr. Xavier, Honorable, and the gentleman next to him, please summarize as we give the platform to these panelists to attend to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Alan, just a clarification for you. The 2020-2021 sectoral contribution to revenue highlights 4 sectors that contributed 71% of revenue collected in that year, the previous year. These 4 sectors include the wholesale and retail sector, which is the biggest, and then the manufacturing sector, the information and communication sector, and the financial and insurance sector. These are formal formal sectors, they contribute 71% of the revenue in a particular year, which actually falls short in this particular year. Now, the point about the informal sector is that we cannot just depend on these 4 sectors when we have a huge sector which captures the GDP of 52% without transforming that sector and increasing our tax to GDP ratio, which is dismal even in sub-Saharan African standards. That's the point that I was making. And the second thing is that some of the low-hanging fruit in multinational companies that you said, if we can get them, let's get them to tax. I agree with you, but some of them are actually not taxpayers. They are tax remitters. Uganda's leading tax remitter, if I might say, is a telecom company. They collect excise duty from us on data, on airtime. They collect VAT on our behalf. We're the ones who pay. They remit to URA. But when they are counting the leading taxpayers, they are counting those ones. So I think we need to create more taxpayers, not just tax remitters.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Javier. That is the Country Director of Action Aid International Uganda. Just to remind you that we have gone short of time. My name is Jacqueline Arinda, and with me in this discussion, I had Isaac Jagenda, Supervisor Tax Education from Uganda Revenue Authority, and I had Ms. Kaitake, the founder of Kaitake Farm Foundation, and Ms. Nyamtoro Fiona, who is the youth female representative in Parliament. And lastly, that is Alan Muhereza, who is the tax team leader, Youth for Tax Justice Network. This event, we are celebrating Africa Youth Day, and it has been organized by SEATINI in partnership with other stakeholders, that is National Youth Council Uganda, and of course Uganda Revenue Authority, European Union, and Action Aid. Thank you so much for watching and joining us, and please join the discussion. The Africa Youth Day has just started, the month has just started, and we'll be engaging you on other discussions about the youth. For those ones that were attending on Zoom, we appreciate your time. Have a very good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to just clarify that that was for NTV, which was streaming live, and we were short by 4 minutes, so I had to summarize it and end it.